The movie begins by showing a blind man named Zatoich who manages to subdue his opponents, relying on his skills with the sword as well as his very sharp senses of hearing and smell, thus making himself feared by the samurai at that time. One day, a group of thugs orders a boy to steal Zatoichi's cane. However, the boy says that he doesn't dare to disturb Zatoich, who has a reputation as a legendary swordsman. The thugs then approach the sitting Zatoich and start hurling taunts and insults, believing Zatoich to be just a weak, blind swordsman. However, without saying much, Zatoich immediately silences them with a deadly sword slash, making the other thugs flee in a hurry. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Aunt Oume, a farmer and vegetable seller at the market, is approached by a group of people from a Yakuza gang named Ginzu. They force Aunt Oume and the other merchants to give up all the money they have. Ginzu and his gang often act arbitrarily, sometimes even carrying out anarchic actions that greatly disturb the residents. But what can the residents do? They can only obey the thugs' wishes to survive because the police officers choose to turn a blind eye after receiving bribes from the Yakuza. Zatoich, who was once a samurai who had slaughtered many people, chose to retire and ventured out as a traveling masseuse. On his way to the city, he meets Aunt Oume, who is struggling to carry her wares. Zatoich then helps her, and as a thank you, Aunt Oume invites him to stay at her house for a while. During his stay there, Zatoich becomes good friends with Aunt Oume's nephew named Shinkichi. On the other hand, a ronin named Hattori is traveling around town looking for a job to pay for the treatment of his terminally ill wife. Hattori considers taking a job as a Yakuza's bodyguard because the pay is quite high. Before accepting, he asks his wife for permission because the job is very dangerous, just like when he was a samurai. Even though his wife forbids it, Hattori has no other choice, as his wife's health condition is getting worse day by day. Hattori then goes to the most famous tavern in town, where Ginzu's Yakuza gang is threatening the owner. Seeing this, Hattori helps the tavern owner and manages to repel the delinquents with his skill with the sword. He then asks the thugs to bring their boss to the tavern to fight him. Not long after, the delinquents come to see Hattori again with a man named Inosuke, who is the right-hand man of the big boss of the Ginzu Yakuza gang. But apparently, Hattori didn't mean to fight against Inosuke. He asks his henchmen to call their boss because Hattori wants to apply for a job as a Yakuza's bodyguard. After learning of Hattori's abilities and background as a ronin, Inosuke immediately accepts Hattori as his bodyguard. Elsewhere, Zatoich, who is chopping firewood, is disturbed by a man who had a mental breakdown after the war and often makes a fuss by shouting and running around the village. Zatoich throws a wood stick and hits the man. Long story short, Zatoich and Shinkichi then visit a gambling house belonging to the Ginzu gang to try their luck in the gambling arena. With his very sharp hearing, Zatoich can guess the number of dice the bookies play consecutively without the slightest mistake, thus allowing the blind man to make a big profit in the gambling arena. Shinkichi is surprised after witnessing with his own eyes the greatness of Zatoich, who can guess the number of dice so accurately. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Hattori is assigned to kill a businessman who is thought to have carried out a rebellion against the Ginzu gang. With his skill with the sword, Hattori easily kills the man. Zatoich then visits the tavern where Hattori is also present. They are seated quite close together so that when the tavern Gramps accidentally drops Zatoichi's cane, which turns out to be a sword, Hattori sees it straight away and increases his vigilance. This almost leads to a feud between Zatoich and Hattori, but they decide to withdraw and not mess up the tavern. On the following night, Zatoich and Shinkichi return to the gambling house, where Shinkichi deliberately bets on Zatoichi's victory. They manage to make a lot of money after Zatoich correctly guesses the number of dice. After the big win, Zatoich and Shinkichi then visit a brothel, where they meet Osei and Okinu, the two geisha siblings who intend to rob them of their money. But as it turns out, Zatoich has already guessed the geisha's intentions. Zatoich even knows that Osei is actually a man who dresses up like a woman. Because their disguise and plans are exposed, Okinu and her brother tell Zatoich that they are the only survivors of a robbery and massacre carried out on their family estate 10 years ago. They soon discover the people responsible for their family's murders are the same Yakuza wreaking havoc on the small town. In addition to robbing the customers' money, the siblings are seeking revenge for the murder of their parents. After hearing the story from Okinu and her brother, Zatoichi is determined to help them. On the other hand, Shinkichi seems to be practicing to have the ability like Zatoichi to guess the number of dice. Feeling confident that he can also be like Zatoichi, Shinkichi then goes to the gambling house that afternoon. Unfortunately, he actually loses all his money because his guess is not correct at all. After returning from the gambling house, he sees Inosuke and his henchmen collecting security money at a shop. When the shop owner refuses to give the money, Inosuke orders his henchmen to beat up the shop owner and rummage through the items in his shop. Okinu and her brother then visit a tavern, where she asks the tavern owner to introduce her to rich men to entertain them as a geisha and earn a lot of money. The tavern owner then introduces Okinu and Osei to a rich businessman, where they are asked to entertain him tonight. Without thinking, Okinu and Osei accept the offer. While entertaining the rich man, Okinu realizes that the rich man's assistant is a member of the Yakuza group that attacked and killed her parents 10 years ago. She immediately drops the man. Elsewhere, Zatoichi and Shinkichi return to visit the gambling house. Because Zatoichi is always able to guess accurately, the bookies end up rigging the game so that he won't keep winning. But apparently, Zatoichi realizes this and immediately slaughters the bookies for cheating. Zatoichi then massacres all the gang members there because he knows the gambling house belongs to the Ginzu gang, the Yakuza gang that had robbed and killed Okinu and Osei's parents, so he intends to help them take revenge. Knowing that their gambling house had been destroyed and all the Ginzu gang members there had been massacred, Inosuke orders Hattori to investigate and kill the culprit. When Hattori arrives at the scene and observes the condition of all the corpses there, he concludes that the massacre must have been done by Zatoichi and asks the Ginzu gang to search for the blind swordsman throughout the city. Feeling that his hiding place will soon be discovered by Ginzu's gang, Shinkichi suggests that they hide at Aunt Oume's house for a while. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ginzu's gang plans to restore the gambling house business by seizing a gambling house belonging to another Yakuza gang. With the help of Hattori, who is able to slaughter other members of the Yakuza gang with his very powerful sword skill, the Ginzu gang succeeds in carrying out their plan. However, Shinkichi, who witnesses the massacre carried out by Hattori and Ginzu's gang, then tells Zatoichi and warns the blind man that the Ginzu gang has a very great swordsman who can slaughter all other Yakuza gang members alone. After that, while Okinu and Zatoichi seem to be having a serious conversation about Okinu's desire to return to the city and meet the rich man she met the other day to dig up information about Ginzu's gang, Shinkichi and Osei are seen bathing together. Shinkichi then questions why Osei looks so beautiful like a woman when in fact he is a man. Osei admits that he is diligent in taking care of his face and body, and indeed has skin and facial structure like a woman since birth, so he will look beautiful when he uses makeup. Okinu and Osei then return to the city and go to the tavern. They ask the tavern owner about the rich man who might still be interested in hiring their services as a geisha. The tavern owner says that he will tell the rich man about it. The tavern owner then asks about where Okinu and Osei live now. Okinu innocently replies that she and Osei live at Aunt Oume's house with a blind masseuse named Zatoichi. Not long after, the tavern owner says that they can come to the rich man's house tonight because they are already waiting there. Okinu and Osei immediately head to the rich man's house without the slightest suspicion. But apparently, when they get there, they are surrounded by Inosuke and his henchmen who already know who they really are. At the same time, Ginzu's gang members storm Aunt Oume's house to kill Zatoichi after receiving information from the tavern owner. Not finding Zatoichi, they set fire to Aunt Oume's house. Back to the two geisha siblings, when Okinu and Osei are being pushed by Inosuke and his minions, Zatoichi finally appears and saves the two of them. Zatoichi immediately slaughters all of Inosuke's men, even though Inosuke manages to escape from there. Zatoichi then chases Inosuke until he finally meets Hattori. Apparently, Hattori's ability to fight using a sword is still far behind Zatoichi, who is more powerful and experienced, as the blind man can easily defeat Hattori in just a short time. The following day, Inosuke is found lifeless by the river. Antoume, Shinkichi, Okinu, and Osei are seen sitting together while watching the rebuilding process of the burned house and smiling with relief that Inosuke and his henchmen have died, which means they have succeeded in taking revenge and no longer feel threatened by the presence of the Ginzu gang, who liked to oppress the townspeople. Meanwhile, Zatoichi decides to return to traveling as a traveling masseuse. After slicing his way through an army of henchmen with his sword, Zatoichi defeats the Yakuza's bodyguard, a powerful Ronin, in a duel. Zatoichi later wanders into town and confronts the tavern owner, who is revealed to be a Yakuza gang second in command. Before killing the tavern owner, Zatoichi opens his eyes, and the tavern owner is shocked after seeing Zatoichi's eyes. Zatoichi then goes to the tavern Gramps, who is none other than the elderly Yakuza boss who had been masquerading as a bumbling old waiter up until this point. He deliberately disguised himself as the tavern owner's grandfather, who was his right-hand man, to trick his enemies and protect himself from those who wanted to kill him. However, Zatoichi had known the true identity of the tavern Gramps since the first time the blind swordsman had visited the tavern. Knowing that all of his men had been massacred by Zatoichi and that it was no longer possible to build everything from scratch at his old age, the tavern Gramps then asks Zatoichi to kill him. But because the old man did not regret all the injustices he had done in his life, Zatoichi decides to spare his life and instead blinded the tavern Gramps so that the old man, who now lives alone, suffers for the rest of his life. The film ends with a dance number led by a noted Japanese tap dance troupe, and Zatoichi walks down a trail and trips over a rock, saying, "Even with my eyes wide open, I can't see anything." So, what did you think of the movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.